Hi there, guys, and welcome to the flagship episode of URG Radio. My name is Kirby Viper93, but you can call me KV if you like, and I'm joined by two very special guests among United Retro Gamers. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys.
I am Six, and of course, the other half of the Engaged Gamers is here along with me.
Indeed, and I'm Ghostie.
Welcome to the show, you guys. As this is the first episode, probably we should explain what this is all about. This is just United Retro Gamers' way of connecting with you guys and, taking a little bit of time to talk about the things that we find interesting and hopefully that you find interesting as well. For those of you who don't know me, I am KV. Mostly, this is what I do, is this podcast. I don't really have another show with URG. This is my thing, so we're going to get quite a bit of that. Just as far as what I'm into in terms of gaming, I like the Kirby series, as you might have guessed. I also like Zelda, because who doesn't? Cave Story, and all other kinds of indie games. And fun fact, I am actually the youngest person in United Retro Gamers. That's just how it worked out. And what I want to do is I want to get into music production as a career. And I actually thought this would be a good way to sort of get a little bit of experience. Like, this is almost like a radio show, and that wouldn't actually be a bad career path either. So, that's sort of what I'm doing around here. And if you guys would like to tell them a little bit about yourselves, aside from the little they know.
Sure, if you don't know about us with URG, we both work on Item Detectives. I kind of manage the episodes, and I write the script, and I get the game footage together. I'm probably going to be the most common host on the podcast. I like mainly Mega Man RPGs and adventure-style games. There's so many, I can't name them all. And a fun fact about me, I'd like to be a video game creator. So, that's part of why I'm working with URG and part of why we're doing Item Detectives, so I can look at games in a different way. Anyway, go ahead, hon.
As for me, with Item Detectives, what I do is the other half of the work, which is the animation part.
She says half. She really means like 85%.
She means most. She does. It's true.
It's true. I do most of the work, but I just never really like to say that, because But I'm real big into Mario Brothers. I'm also really big into the horror genre of video games, like Amnesia and some of the other big titles too, like that. But outside of animation, although also directly inside the animation as well, I also like to draw a lot and animate in my spare time.
Yes, she does random animations from time to time.
Just little ones.
That's pretty cool. I'm learning all kinds of new things about you guys today.
Yep.
Alright, well, now that we've got the introductions out of the way, we do have a couple minor announcements for you. First off, in terms of what's going on with URG, all other shows have sort of been placed on hold production-wise in preparation for this first episode of the podcast. This is long overdue, and that's sort of why they were all waiting, was to put a little bit of pressure on me, get me the kick in the ass that I needed, and Steven really helped out with that a lot.
Well, I did my best.
Oh yeah, and he did quite a bit. Don't worry, I'll be back in due time, but you do have to sit here and listen to me talk for a little while before that happens, so...
Well, hopefully it turns out great. Don't put so much pressure on yourself like that.
Yeah.
That's whatever. This'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yes,
those shows will be back, though.
Indeed, including Item Detectives.
Yeah, can't wait to see episode 2 of Item Detectives.
Oh, that's going to be a lot of fun. But,
yes, it is.
There are some gaming announcements that we would like to make.
Indeed.
I want to talk about Terraria a little bit. It's kind of one of the topics we're going to cover today, so I just thought I'd like to note they're getting a major overhaul. All new blocks, new townspeople, NPCs. I mean, there's a new biome. They're going all out, new enemies and everything. So look for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's coming next month if you're into that thing.
Sounds pretty interesting. I don't really play Terraria much myself, but I don't know. Given this new update, maybe I'll check it out.
Maybe.
It's my little brother bought it for me for my birthday a couple months ago, and I just literally have not touched it since then.
Oh, wow.
So, I don't know. Maybe I will, considering this new update. DuckTales. Everyone's remember that old NES classic? You know, everyone knows the moon theme at least.
Yeah.
At least.
Well, turns out it just recently got an HD remake. I actually saw the trailer for it the other night, and it looks pretty stellar. I didn't get to hear what any of the new music, if there is indeed some new music, sounds like, but I'm hoping that that side of it sounds really awesome. So if you were a fan of the original NES game, definitely go check out the HD remake if that seems like your thing.
Please do.
Yeah.
And then one other thing, there was also, you know, the holiday season's coming up, and with that, there are a couple more consoles that are getting ready to come out, namely the Xbox One and the PS4, and another up-and-comer that's sort of getting ready to happen is Oculus Rift, which for those of you who don't know is sort of a, it's a first step towards virtual reality is what it is. It's a neat little eye visor kind of thing.
Which is in part looking to incorporate old and new games.
Right.
And it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun for people who don't want new content and want to play their old games in a new way.
Right. It sounds like a lot of fun. I know that there were dev kits sent out a while ago for, you know, some actual Oculus Rift exclusive titles perhaps, but
that might be in the works, but we don't know. We will see someday. Yeah. It's a new system in the works. It might take a long time.
And that brings us to this week's poll. We are going to have a poll every week, hopefully.
Hopefully.
The one we got for you this week is the Xbox One versus the PS4 versus the Oculus Rift. First of all, which one, if any, will you end up buying?
And second, are they making games better, or is it just a hardware update? Like, for example, do you feel like games are just made for graphics, and these systems allow for those newer, higher graphics, and that's all they're really doing with gaming? Or do you feel like Oculus Rift or other things are trying to bring back older feels to new games and go in a new direction other than that?
Right. And personally, I think if I'm going to be buying any of them, I'll be getting a PS4. Just because Oculus Rift is, while it seems really cool, it isn't quite finished yet, and I would rather wait until that's completely done and a little bit cheaper if I can manage it before I actually end up getting one. And the Xbox One is the Xbox One. That's an entirely separate podcast. But
no one wants to talk about that right now.
No.
Yeah. And in response to the second question, I think you can sort of guess our feelings on that already. But the Xbox One and the PS4 are really just sort of hardware updates, and they're not really helping the condition of gaming as we know it. Whereas Oculus Rift is trying to, you know, push the boundary nowadays of what's possible with games. But again, the price point's just a little bit too high for now.
That's for sure. For Sam and I think we would get the PS4 just because we didn't end up getting the PS3, and we had the Wii, and it turned out all right. But, you know, when you get to buy one of the systems every round, you got to make a choice, and nobody wants the Xbox One.
Apparently,
and Oculus Rift will burn the hole right through your pocket, so...
Yep. So...
That is true.
Much rather go with that
Unfortunately,
PS4.
though, I would love to play with the Oculus Rift. That would be so much fun.
Oh, definitely. I'd love to get my hands on that.
Oh, who wouldn't?
But that's not what we're talking about this week. We're actually bringing it back a couple decades or so. We're going to be talking about, what else? Retro gaming for this first episode. Now, the real question here is, what would you call retro? I know a lot of people have a lot of different definitions for it, so we're going to go ahead and tell you what we consider the line for retro. And that is, like, the latest retro era, like, the last line of retro consoles is the N64 and the PlayStation. Like, that is what we consider still retro. Like, anything later than that is just still too new.
Yeah, but over time, these things will become classic and then retro as time passes.
Right. I mean, like, that's not saying that that is the end-all, be-all cutoff date for what is retro. At least not as far as we're concerned. This is just what we are calling retro for the sake of...
Retro.
For the sake of...
the podcast.
For the sake of not being confusing, really.
Yeah. to have a concise talking point for the podcast, really.
Exactly. And there's one other thing is what distinguishes retro games from modern games, aside from just, what system they were released on. Because modern gaming sort of has a different set of rules regarding what needs to happen than retro gaming did. Namely because retro gaming, back when those were still out, there weren't many developed rules yet. They were still figuring out what the rules were. So there were a lot of different experiments back in the retro gaming days and some of them worked, some of them didn't, that sort of led to what we have now in the modern gaming era,
which is a lot of hand holding.
Well, yeah, there is a lot of hand holding in modern gaming that wasn't present in retro gaming, but I don't know what else to say about that, really. Let's go ahead and we did a little bit, but there's just one other thing to mention here, and that's retro style versus true retro. With games like the letter V 6 Times or Cave Story, those are sort of newer games that are out of the retro era, but they're a tremendous callback to that era. And those are, like I said, those are what we call retro style versus true retro, because a lot of them do still have those that influence of modern gaming that you can really see.
And what an example of that would be like what he said with V, or like in Minecraft, where you have the very blocky nature, and then where you learn how to play the game through the game.
Yeah, these games sort of do follow the rules that retro gaming used, but there's still, like I said, there's still some evidence of modern gaming present in it.
Yeah.
Yep. Indeed.
Maybe we should go further and talk about notable true retro games.
That's probably a good idea. It'll be a lot easier than just trying to explain what we're talking about in concept. Then, let's just give some examples. That's probably a better idea. And of course, no list of influential retro games could be complete, or even, in fact, started without the original Super Mario Bros.
Of course, and the dual cart of the Duck Hunt can't be failed to be mentioned either.
You got to talk about Duck Hunt.
That seemed to be one of the most influential and common releases in the same sentence.
Yeah,
right.
In America, I don't know about elsewhere, and with the Famicom, we've heard of the 42-in-1 stuff, but for some odd reason, Nintendo didn't seem to play with that as much. More games in one cartridge.
Yeah.
Right.
But each of these games do have their influences on further gaming, and as for Mario Brothers, it turned platforming into what it was. It set a genre for people to follow.
And really, it saved the state of gaming as we know it. If it weren't for Super Mario Bros., we wouldn't be talking about games right now. It would be a relic of an era long lost.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Mario entranced everyone.
Yeah, it really did. And Duck Hunt was also the first of its kind. It was at least one of the first-person shooter games, if not the very first.
We would have to go and look that up and put something like that down in the uploaders comments thingy.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I know it was definitely one of the very, very early ones, and it did sort of popularize the idea.
It led to a lot of games that led to our common Call of Duty and stuff like that.
Yeah. And speaking of, we were talking about how retro gaming sort of taught players how to play the game by playing the game. Mm-hmm. Super Mario Bros. Had a lot of that, especially in its level design. It gave you blocks that were, suspended in midair, and, that's your first hint that you can jump. Yep. And then there were enemies that, they just sort of walked very slowly, so you could take your time and think about how you could take them out. You can jump, so what happens if you jump on top of them? Lo and behold, the little Goomba, sort of squishes flat. So now you've got some idea of combat.
Yep.
And then once you've put 1 and 2 together, all of a sudden you're in Bowser's castle.
Exactly.
Saving a little mushroom.
And that's all without, some toad popping out of a box and being like, "Hey, Mario!
If you
hit the A button, you can jump!"
Yeah, that never happened. That's very true. And it definitely set a tone for the game.
The only time you
Yeah.
see him is when you're
Another game that we
frustrated.
could mention, and we should mention if we're going to mention Mario, is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It helped popularize gaming by making it competitive and splitting the fan bases. Either you liked Mario or you liked how fast Sonic was for some people,
Right.
and how.
Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Yep.
Yep.
Blast processing, I believe, is the term. I remembered it this time. Is what
Which really meant absolutely nothing. It just sounded cool.
it sounded, yeah.
It really didn't mean anything.
Oh.
But yeah, you're absolutely right about Sonic and how it helped to make it a little bit more competitive by giving, by starting up a sort of rivalry with Mario.
Mhm.
And it also helped to sort of put the focus on the hardware of the games, because the whole reason that Sonic came to exist was to show off how fast the Sega's processors could handle, like, actually running the game.
And it turned out very well.
Absolutely. And that actually, we were just talking about, the modern consoles, how they're really just sort of a hardware update. I think that Sega really started that, to actually focus on the hardware and what they could actually make the system do, and then they could make the games better from there.
It seems like game developers aren't as centric to what they're doing, or they don't have the money. It could be something like that, but we're merely speculating there as to what's going on, because games are definitely suffering for it.
Well, I mean, we sort of hit a point where, technology can only get so good
Yeah.
before it really slows to a crawl, and I think we've sort of hit that point. But Sonic didn't really have that problem. Like, Sonic was on the cutting edge of technology. That was where the whole thing came from, was the Genesis was just so much faster than the NES. And again, it made it really competitive. It was there was a friendly rivalry going on. They were business competitors, but, at the same time, it was good for both of them.
It was. I mean, Sonic is still alive today, even though the franchise died, which says a lot about characters these days.
It does.
Well, I mean, the franchise isn't totally dead. Sonic Colors came out, and, it actually was pretty decent. I guess I didn't really get to play it much, but I've heard good things.
I meant more of the console than...
Oh, well, yeah, Sega as a company has sort of died out as compared to Nintendo, who's still going strong.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened there, but it's something to note if we're also going to talk about Sonic a little there and how the Sega advanced hardware and then disappeared. It's pretty interesting to put all together there.
Yeah, that's true.
It is.
Let's talk about The Legend of Zelda and Metroid. That's definitely a fun topic.
Absolutely. Those were sort of trendsetters for the adventure genre, like what Super Mario Bros. Did for platforming and what Sonic did for, well, also for platforming, but also for, the hardware, like the meta game almost. Zelda and Metroid sort of did for the adventure genre. They really helped it to define what it was, especially when you compare it to the old text adventures. That there wasn't really, there wasn't so much to really know in a text adventure. You really had to map it out, and you had to use your own intuition. And Zelda and Metroid really changed that. They didn't give you clues as to where to go exactly, so there was still some mapping that needed done. But
it was more mental mapping than physical writing it down and remembering an order of things to do. It could be all done mentally compared. 20 pages of notes. I played a couple of those games, so I remember myself having that problem. Legend of Zelda definitely had that advantage, and it definitely helped evolve the genre. I didn't get to play Metroid, so I can't talk much about that. But.
Well, and it's been a really long time since I played the original Metroid, but it does give you, some more clues as to where you're going than, a text adventure would have. And Zelda actually had the advantage of the mini-map, so you knew approximately where things were, and you could tell them, oh, you got to go up to this corner of the map, instead of, just saying, yeah, from where you start, go up so many screens and right so many screens. And, I don't know, it just really was a lot more helpful to the player.
Indeed.
It definitely made it so much more fun to play.
It did.
Another game that we should mention here is Battletoads. Jave, in the retrospective, covered most of this, so we're only going to talk about it in passing. What I would like to say about it is it showed how games could be super fun, but still extremely difficult. And
Oh, God.
even today, it's a game that holds up difficulty-wise. Like, you can... This brand new game, X, was not as difficult as Battletoads.
Oh, God, Battletoads.
Oh, it's Battletoads.
See, even now, I'm just like, literally in pain.
Yeah.
Because just
Thinking
from the
about
word
it, just from the word.
Battletoads.
It hurts. It's pain.
It hurts.
It's so awful. But you're right. It did sort of show that games could be super difficult, but still be manageable and still be fun. Like games like Dark Souls and Demon Souls, which, just came out recently, they sort of followed that trend. And if Battletoads hadn't been, and really most NES games, because they were, back in the day, they were pretty hard. Because they had to be. Because you only could fit so much onto the cartridge. And, you wanted them to keep playing it because they were so expensive. You wanted them to feel like they got their money's worth.
Yep.
Which, in comparison to nowadays, you spend $60 and you don't get the same value. You could buy an older game nowadays for...
Right. It's longer, but it's basically telling you where to go the whole way. And it's not... It's completely different from how it was back in the day.
Definitely.
One other game that was there was a big milestone in gaming, and another hallmark of a genre was Final Fantasy, which really brought the whole tabletop RPG idea, which was very big with Dungeons and Dragons and the like back in the day. And that's still big, but it really brought that to the virtual world, and I think brought a whole lot of other people back to the tabletops.
Definitely, but it also created the group of people who would rather play all of that without having to have the dungeon master. They could still play with a couple of friends. Some titles in particular even let you play at the same time, but there's always the aspect of how you want to do things, and you can plan that together with someone else. And,
right.
That definitely set a tone for a lot of people. There's still also the people who love to play those games by themselves, but...
Well, yeah. And the Final Fantasy series was, like I said, it was a hallmark of a genre. It really, there's influences of the original Final Fantasy and of tabletop RPGs of all kinds in almost every RPG that's out now. And there's been some degradation, and I use the term lightly, for lack of a better one, in modern RPGs where, it's a little bit more hand-holding, like we've been saying. But, with the original Final Fantasy, and with quite a few to come, it really just dumped you right into the middle of it. Like, from the word start, you just sort of picked your team, and then you were dumped right outside the town, and from there you just went. You could have gone anywhere within reason. You're only stuck on a kind of a small island, but
there's still, you can get yourself into trouble really quickly in that game. It's a surprise.
Yes, you can. It is.
Exactly.
And then that was something that also carried over from then into the rest of its after games. Gosh dang it, sequelities.
Yeah, into the
predecessors.
Or not predecessors, but the later games.
The latter games. There we go.
Yeah. So, Final Fantasy, and that it was supposed to be Squaresoft's swan song is something astounding, too. That it was supposed to be the last game they ever made, but because it did so well, it really kept the company afloat, and actually, that was sort of proof that gaming was sustainable, and that if you had a great game, people would want to play it, and you could make more.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that's all it takes. Sam, you've been awfully quiet this whole time. You have anything to say about these games?
I do. I really liked the Final Fantasy series. I think it really did do very well with when it first started. How it just basically threw you in and gave you the ability to choose whoever you wanted. Your own cast, basically.
Yeah.
That's a real nice touch if you think about it, even though there was really no explanation for it.
Of course.
And that's something else they capitalized on. They didn't have to explain to you what was going on. That made you want to play more.
Indeed.
That's true. They sort of held it back, and they fed you just a little bit at a time, just to keep you on the hook.
Just teaspoon fed you. Little tidbits.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, the princess has been kidnapped.
What?
Oh, I've kidnapped the princess. Thanks for rescuing the princess. There's some stuff across this island. We're gonna build a bridge for you. Go on.
Okay,
go and
I'm
collect
gonna
these
go
little
across the
crystals.
bridge now, and then...
Yeah. And then all of this interesting stuff starts happening little by little, and you want to find out what's going on.
We want to see the bigger picture, the bigger story behind just the princess getting kidnapped.
Exactly.
Oh, that...
Which, if you're playing something like Mario, there wasn't a bigger story than that. That was the whole
No,
story.
yeah, basically, that was the whole story, aside from rescuing a bunch of other people who probably...
And you know, now that I think about it,
Yeah.
that was kind of a brilliant turn with Final Fantasy II. Is like, that's where it starts, but that's not the whole thing. That's literally like just the first arc.
Yeah.
So if you're used to something like Mario, where that's literally, or Zelda, where that's all you
all
get
there is.
throughout the entire thing, then you're sort of intrigued with like, now what are they gonna do now?
There's more to do? Wow. From adventure genre into
Are
RPG.
there
You mean I'm not done?
are there more princesses to rescue? I don't understand.
I don't understand. I can't compute. My adventure brain, it knows nothing but rescuing princesses.
Well, shit. Now what do I do?
Well, sir, you can go across that bridge over there. Oh, okay.
Let's talk about some personal choices. And since Sam has been quiet, let's make her do 2 or 3 before we give a couple of ours, eh, KB?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right. Because we've sort of been...
in a row.
There's so many really revolutionary games in the retro era, but we can't talk about them all. It's probably a good idea just to talk about a couple of the ones that we ourselves really loved and that we thought were just very, really big games for gaming.
Indeed.
And for ourselves, really.
Yeah.
I think
Go
in
ahead.
that case, if I'm starting, then I'm going to mention Mario Paint first off. Since that's
Mario
one of the
Paint.
games I also grew up with. I remember being spoiled and having that game. Aside from just having the SNES in general. But that game brought about something that I really don't think was really big back in the era, but painting! Painting as a video game! Why not?
And of course, an artist would love something like that.
Of course, you get a little tablet pen thingy, and you get a little mouse. I mean, it's almost like
Oh,
having
yeah,
a
that's true.
computer.
I forgot about the little mouse and the tablet that came with Mario Paint.
Yeah, it was almost like having a computer. Almost.
Right.
But anyway, aside from the fact that you can paint and pretty much paste things like, I think, mushrooms and stuff in certain places. And I think they even gave you some template things to mess with, but they also had a music editor.
Oh,
The
yeah,
music
Mario
editor
Paint's
of
composer.
Mario Paint. It still stands the test of time today as
It
someone.
really does. I've actually seen the Mario Paint composer as just like a
It
standalone
is.
download.
Whoever that person is, you want to thank them because now you don't have to run off and get an SNES again and get that game again, because who knows how much it's worth now. Probably
Of
like
course, it's
25 cents.
so rare, I'm sure.
I've heard quite a few songs remade through that, and I gotta say, it
Oh,
still does hold
yes,
to
yes.
the test of time today. It's impressive.
it
If you ever get a
is.
chance to play with that, it's worth a go. Of course,
It
you
is
have to
worth
be
a
real
go.
patient with the
Very
notes.
much
It's not going
so.
to be easy.
Right. And I've always said that within restraints comes creativity. Within limitations comes a lot of creativity. And, the Mario Paint composer is sort of an example of that, as are a lot of NES and Super Nintendo games, just in general.
Oh,
but,
exactly.
with the Mario Paint composer, it's neat to see, they only give you so many
Notes.
instruments, so to speak. They
And
only give
that
you so many
too.
different sounds you can make. And it's interesting to hear all of the music that has come out of just the Mario Paint composer.
Yeah, especially with how simplistic it was. I mean,
Right,
didn't
with
have
how
to
little
really
you can
know
do, it's
music.
amazing what people have done.
exactly, and you didn't really have to know music either in order to use it. Like, you could just be
Right.
messing around and make something amazing and be like, oh wow, that doesn't sound too bad. I like it. You could make some
Sounds
original
great.
stuff
There's-
like
Like Steven said, I've heard some really excellent...
that. And that too, for the people who do
some
know
excellent
music.
just videos, some excellent songs that people have made in Mario Paint Composer, some excellent covers of songs that exist.
I know, and that's so interesting to say, though, to say covers in Mario Paint Composer, but it's very true. There are
Yeah, there have been
many,
some wonderful
so
remixes.
many examples. Just YouTube Mario Paint Composer, you won't regret it.
That was quite the tangent about Mario Paint there.
Mario Paint was a big one.
Yeah,
it
it
was.
is, though. It's a very serious thing to be discussed. It's very ahead of its time.
Very much so.
Yeah. So, Sam, what were some of the other games you enjoyed?
Well, one other game I really enjoyed and also grew up with was Aladdin.
like the Super Nintendo Aladdin?
Yeah, the Super Nintendo
That's
Aladdin
awesome.
and the Genesis one. I was a spoiled child, but
Oh,
yes,
you had both of them. Okay.
I had both of them. I mean, my parents loved Disney. They loved the crap out of Disney, so the Capcom Disney thing
who
kind of
didn't?
really
Yeah.
was their thing. But they also bought it for me as well, because
Well,
I
of
was
course.
real big into Disney.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And we could just take a minute to talk about Aladdin and that was sort of in the middle of the golden age of licensed games.
Yes,
like
it
especially where
was.
Disney and Capcom came together.
Beautiful.
That's very
beautiful.
true. They made so many great games, which is in contrast to nowadays, which most games just seem to be poorly made when it comes to licensing
Licensed
statuses.
materials.
And they seem to have a negative air about them. Most people don't want anything to do with them.
Yeah, and I mean there was a fall off in quality as time wore on, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly when it happened, but back in most of the Super Nintendo Disney games were pretty great. And I mean,
They were.
you know, E.T. notwithstanding,
Well, yeah, that's...
so most of the licensed games from back in the day were pretty stellar. And I mean, Aladdin was a good example. We just mentioned DuckTales earlier.
Yeah.
Lion King.
That was another great example. Goof Troop.
Goof
Lion King.
Troop. Oh, that was such an amazing game. I remember that one.
Goof Troop is still like a fan favorite today.
It is. That was such a good game. Difficult, but
So many
good game.
good Disney games.
so many.
That was a really good co-op game.
It was. Everybody loved playing 2-player on that game.
Yeah,
Everybody.
because you know you're working together, and that
You
was
are.
something
And
that
that
was sort of harder to implement back in the day too. But Goof Troop did it pretty well.
Yeah. I don't even think you could hit your partner in that game. Or could you?
You could, but you would just stun them. Like I don't think you'd really
Hurt them.
like
really.
hurt them. Yeah.
Stunning is amusing in video games.
It is.
Yeah,
and-
Especially the Disney
And actually,
ones.
you can use the stun to your advantage. You can give them like some mercy invincibility because they're stunned.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then
That's
get them
smart
through the
stuff.
level, and if you die, hey, doesn't matter.
Oh yeah,
You got
it
them
was
through the
pretty
level.
easy to avoid some game over situations.
Yep. But back to Aladdin. I'm gonna go with the SNES one for this one. Not to say that the Genesis wasn't a good one too, but it had a lot of
Although most
difficulty to it.
people would say the Genesis one isn't a good one.
Oh, I played both of them, so I beat both
Yeah.
of them, so I really I can't really pick and choose between them, but I'll pick the SNES one this time. The SNES one had really good music and graphics associated with it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely, and the bonus was really good too, because you didn't have what you had in the Genesis, which you had one negative one. So you just get all power-ups or something good every time you played it.
Which is always nice in a bonus game,
Well,
because
yes.
there's too many opportunities for failure along the way.
Especially
Yeah.
if you're hating it for lives. Or
Definitely
something.
made you want to play the game more. It was a different kind of hook for the player.
Right.
Right.
Especially since most of the game was pretty hard anyway.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
most of the game is pretty hard, even on the SNES one. Even certain platforming was difficult, I remember, right? But you had the little cheat thing, so I guess you could kind of cheat with that.
Oh yeah, you kind of had your little float.
But you had to get it every level.
Yeah, that was the only
the
hitch there. Is you
difficulty.
had to have it. But if you never died, it wasn't a problem. We found that out in a Let's Play.
Yeah,
that
that's
we did
true.
Together.
If you never died, you always kept the sheep once you got it in the first level, and it's the easiest to get in the first level. So,
Right.
little tidbit there. Farm the lives. It's good for you.
Would you like to mention another one of your favorites?
I think I'm gonna pass the torch to either of you guys for now. I think I've talked a lot
Alright.
now.
Well, I kind of had a thought. It was kind of sparked by your Mario Paint discussion and how we were talking about the composer and how within restraints comes creativity. And one of the first examples that sprung to mind for me was Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, indeed. Ooh.
Definitely.
Donkey Kong Country was, oh god, it was mind-blowing
It
for the time with the
was.
3D rendered graphics
Exactly. So beautiful.
and David Wise's soundtrack. Oh my god,
my
You could
David
talk
Wise
about that
is a
forever.
Everything about
a
that
brilliant-
game. Pure
brilliant
beauty.
composer, and there was just there were sounds made in that game that you didn't think could be made by a Super Nintendo. But
Exactly.
it all sounded really great. It looked really great. It looked almost impossible, but it was all done really well. And the game itself, of course, was super fun. It presented a nice challenge, and I need to play through Donkey Kong again. Like it introduced a lot of things besides just straight platforming. Like, the Mario games had a few things. Like you could ride on Yoshi, and like there were some enemies that you could ride on top of or things like that. But Donkey Kong Country actually had, like the animal buddies. Like I can't remember like any of their names now, but Rambi the Rhino is the only one I remember
I know,
for
same here.
for sure every single time.
Oh,
But,
they had
that you
so
could
many
use them to your
animal friends,
advantage.
but it was definitely another unique quality for the game.
It
Yeah,
was.
and like you could use the animals to get to places that
you couldn't
get to
necessarily
normally.
Yeah.
And there were some sections of the game that were, completely different. Like, the minecart levels. Oh my
Oh
god.
god, those minecarts.
The minecart levels are my favorite part.
Oh,
They could
they're
be a
so
lot
fun.
of fun if you did it right.
Yeah. Although I remember
Right.
falling
There
off
were a
them more.
couple. There were a couple that were kind of bullshit, but
Oh yeah,
for the
yeah,
most part, they
yeah.
were just really fun.
Yes.
Oh. They were so difficult for me. It's
So
not
very
even funny.
difficult.
But when you
It's-
get it
and-
down, it's so much fun. I mean, so
It is.
It's
It is.
the game just
And,
makes you
it's-
want to play
it's-
more.
It does.
And it's not anywhere near, like Battletoads difficulty or anything, but
It's got
it was
difficulty.
it was one of those where you knew it was hard, but you knew it was possible because you would get, you were so close every single time. It
Yeah.
wasn't,
So
like, oh my
close.
god, how am I even supposed to do this?
Yep.
Yet, you missed it by that much, and you just wanted to keep going because you only missed it by that much. You can get it this time.
Or the next time before that. Or the next time before that. And
Right. It's like, just one more life, and then I got it.
Yep.
Just one more life, and then I got it.
Yep.
And then 6 lives later.
And then you find yourself going back and farming for lives, and no, I've got to get this. I'm not going back 5 levels to have to do this over
Exactly.
again.
exactly.
No, I'm going back to Candy's bonus game. I gotta get some lives here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, Donkey Kong Country. It was definitely one of my favorites, and I think... I don't know.
It is a game worth mentioning for sure in the retro era. Ooh,
I mean, I don't know. It wasn't exactly groundbreaking. I mean, it kind of was. Like, the graphics and the music were all wonderful. They're highly praised even today. But, it wasn't exactly completely groundbreaking like a couple of the ones we mentioned before.
That's true.
But it was something new to me, and it was a game near and dear to my heart, and it really helped shape me as a gamer.
That's a good way to wrap that up. Why don't
Yes,
you talk
it
about
is.
another game? No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go one now. If that's all right.
Okay.
All right, fine. You talk about another game. I was all set to go again. I'm in the zone. I can talk about all of these.
All right.
I can talk about every single game that was ever released for every system.
Oh my.
Let's do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's do it.
Columns.
Starting with Columns for the Genesis. It was Sega's attempt at fighting Tetris, but
Oh, so there's the one joke for the podcast.
the one joke in the entire thing, right? Like we haven't been funny for the rest of this.
That's true. Fine.
No, I did really like Columns though. While we're talking about it, it was a lot of fun.
It's worth mentioning because it's a quirky game for sure.
Yeah, it was. I always liked the puzzle games, but yeah, no. If you had a game you wanted to talk about, go for it.
I did. I wanted to talk about Shadowgate a little with you guys.
Oh, Shadowgate.
Okay.
I know you
I've actually
haven't
never
played
played
it yet.
Shadowgate.
Yeah. Kemco made a couple point-and-click games that are all noteworthy. The one that I've gotten to in my time so far is Shadowgate. I didn't play it as a kid, but it's made for the NES, and it's this point-and-click adventure game where you're working your way through a castle trying to stop a sorcerer from reviving the behemoth that
Okay.
lies slumbering deep within the earth, I think, is how that storyline goes.
I
And
think
it
Sounds
so.
intense.
It's pretty intense. You get flown there by a sorcerer, and it's just, yeah. And they lead
Like
you.
what? Like he just kind of just dumps you in, and he's like, "Yeah, he's getting ready to just summon the behemoth. There you go. Have fun."
This is your
Pretty
task.
much.
I'm on my way. But
Jesus.
it's a point-and-click interface. You can save as you go. There's magical spells. And you'd think it would be a short game, but for an NES game, I'd say it's probably 5-6 hours of entertainment.
Oh, nice. That is a pretty decent length for an NES game.
Yeah.
I played it in less time because I had already watched the Old World Gamer play it, and then I had him in a COCOM when I played the game. So
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I know there were a lot of point-and-click adventures for the NES that just really didn't work.
yeah, because
I mean,
it was hard to use the pointer, right?
Because with such a simple controller, it's hard to really get any substance in the game without it getting too complex and too confusing.
Yeah, I can agree with you there.
And I guess I'll have to check out Shadowgate and see how it compares. But I've seen too many bad examples of NES point and click adventures I think it works better on the PC. Like with games like Monkey Island or King's Quest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely portrayed a little bit better. But there are some successful titles. If you get a chance, you should check them out.
All right.
I think I'm gonna pass the torch back to UKV on the personal favorites.
Okay. I always I just mentioned columns a minute ago. I had what I had was a Sega CDX, which was, I mean, the original Sega CD was, it was an add-on for the Genesis, and we didn't really have one of those. What the CDX was it was kind of a more compact, like Genesis Sega CD all-in-one kind of thing. It was like super rare, I guess, nowadays. It's kind of a collector's item, and I wish I knew what happened to mine, because I would just, for the sheer novelty of it, I would still like to have it. But
Oh, I bet.
we didn't have a whole lot of straight-up Genesis games because of that. What we did have was a Sega CD game, which was like a Genesis Classics. It was like a 5-in-1.
Mm.
And one, besides Columns, one of the other games that was on there was Streets of Rage, which
Ooh.
my little brothers and I would play the crap out of Streets of Rage. It was so much fun. And that's a genre that you don't really see anymore as the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre.
Yep. That's
I mean,
true.
there's a lot of
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think all of us have played Streets of Rage and gotten our butts just whipped. That game.
Oh,
is
of course. It was pretty
Yeah.
hard.
But it was still fun. I don't know why, but it was one of those games that would kick your ass and bring you back.
Of course, it would kick your ass and make you want more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and especially when you're playing with someone else, because more often than not, you just got in each other's way on purpose. Like, you're both trying to go for the bat, and then, they get the bat, and you start beating them up, trying to make them drop the bat so you can pick up the bat, and then you're still beating them up once you pick up the bat because you just didn't quite realize you had the bat in your hands soon enough. So you're just whacking your partner with the bat, and you're making them screw up, and meanwhile, all these guys are surrounding you and beating the crap out of you, and then you drop the bat, and it's a clusterfuck sometimes,
Yeah.
especially when you're playing with someone else.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But, no, Streets of Rage was a lot of fun, and like I said, it's a genre you don't really see anymore. I mean, Smash Bros. Kind of tried to bring it back a little bit with Brawl and the Subspace Emissary, but mostly with the implement of 3D. And 3D gaming, then, the whole side-scrolling thing sort of became a thing of the past.
Yeah, it has.
Side-scrolling did kind of just disappear.
And I mean, there are still some arcade fighters, but those aren't exactly the same thing. Because Streets of Rage was more, there was more of a mission behind it. It wasn't really just tournament fighting.
That's very true.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah, so Streets of Rage was definitely a big one for me, and I would love to see more of those kinds of games come back because I always found them to be a lot of fun, simple as they were.
Just give them a little bit of story and a little bit of life.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need a whole lot of story for some of those. And I mean, I guess Castle Crashers did kind of, it was sort of trying to bring that back, and it did pretty well for itself. But, for the most part, it's really a niche genre nowadays. It's not something you see a lot of, and I think that's kind of sad.
Well, you never know. That kind of thing could change.
It could.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it does.
Indeed.
For sure.
Oh, man. So, Steven, besides Shadowgate, what were some other games that you played a lot of as a kid?
Well, I'm going to mention my last two this time, I think, because I want to go for another obscure game, but first I want to talk about Mega Man 4. It's probably my personal... What's that?
It's why 4? Like, I feel like you explained this to me once, and I really don't get it. But then, really, the only one I played is 2, so...
Yeah. Well, 4 was the one that I got first for whatever reason. I don't know how that ended up being, but I just remember having 4 first. And the controls felt very comfortable to me. I enjoyed the fact that you could slide around and stuff, and that you could charge the Buster. And it was probably the first game I ever cheated to beat. And then in later life, I had to come back with a keyboard and beat it without cheating. So I was pretty happy about that.
You had to do it emulator style.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's the way it is. But it's a lot of fun. I've come to play other games in the series and find... I've also watched a few as well and found that, it's not the best game, but it's still my favorite. I'm not going to like the other games less because this is my favorite, but it's just, how it works for me.
Right.
I guess that's the way I'll leave that. And then I want to.
And again, I was the only one. Like Mega Man 2 was the only one I really played. Like I played a little bit of the first one, and I played a little bit of X. But Mega Man 2 is the only one I've ever beaten, and 2 and 3 are the only ones that I really hear about. So when you said that Mega Man 4 was one of your favorites, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Most people don't like it. It's not a fan favorite, so I'm the oddball out there on that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good to have different opinions.
It's
true. Here's another different opinion. A lot of people didn't get to play Pirates of Darkwater.
Pirates of what water?
Darkwater. Go watch my Let's Play. Stop being clueless.
You have a large backlog, okay?
I know.
It's a little intimidating.
We both do.
Everybody has a backlog. You gotta attack it somehow. But basically, this game was made after a TV show. And I never watched the TV show, but there was more story than they could cram in the game. And as we've already discussed, when they only give you enough to get you through the area you're intrigued to find out more. So I didn't beat this game as a kid. I beat it as an adult for a Let's Play, of course. This is what happens to me sometimes for whatever reason. My favorites I gotta come back and beat as an adult. But there was one downside to it that I feel like might take away from it for other people. It might be why it wasn't very liked. I don't know. But the final boss was not as difficult as the bosses that came before it. So
yeah, that's always disappointing.
It
that
always
definitely
is.
takes away from a game. But it was the only thing that was wrong. The music was great. The gameplay was fun. Side-scroller beat 'em up, just like Streets of Rage. It just had a different feel to it. It was about pirates and stuff, obviously.
I would hope so.
Pirates
given the
and
name.
monkey birds.
Monkey birds.
I'm not
Monkey
making
birds?
stuff up. It might sound like the weirdest
What the
thing.
hell is a monkey bird?
What
Play
you
the
think it
game.
sounds like?
It's a.
It is a monkey
it
with wings.
was a dumb question.
I can explain this. It just sounds so silly, though. It's a monkey with a beak and wings, basically.
That's so weird.
Hey, it's the game. That might be why people didn't like it either. But anyway, either of you can go on for another game. I think I've covered my topic there.
We kind of mentioned, we sort of talked, we just sort of dipped into like King's Quest and Monkey Island and how like the point and click adventure series was sort of better on, it was like that was all sort of better on the PC than it was on the NES. And PC gaming is kind of difficult to it's kind of difficult to nail down like what is retro exactly. It's a little bit fuzzier there because the transition was pretty smooth for PCs. Like technology wise, it was more of a gradual upgrade with PCs than for consoles. Consoles kind of had their own milestones. Like it's pretty easy to tell the difference between, the NES, the Super Nintendo, the N64, the GameCube, the Wii.
Whereas it's not so simple to tell the difference between the
PC,
first computer and the one that's, sitting.
The one that came right after that, and then after that. I mean, it was just so constant, that stream of updating, that it's kind of a little bit difficult to nail down what you would consider retro. But I mean, there are some games that definitely were, they were definitely just completely new, and they couldn't have been done on any other console. Like they couldn't have been done on consoles to begin with. Like the point and click adventure games, like those, they tried to make those happen on the NES, and then someone had the bright idea to bring them to the PC, and that was how games like King's Quest and Monkey Island and Myst, which is one that I kind of played more of, how those came to be so big. There are definitely some games on PC that couldn't have happened so much on consoles.
That's very true.
Because of their size, scope, and just idea.
Right, and just because it's a lot easier to make it work on a PC because you've got like the full keyboard and mouse to work with, as opposed to just, like this 6-button controller.
And it's easier to customize the requirements.
Of course, yeah. I mean, like with games like Warcraft and Starcraft and Civilization, like all these sim games, The Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon, things like that. That just really would not have been as easy to make happen on the NES. And I mean, like, SimCity for the NES and Super Nintendo, that was pretty big and it worked well enough, but I think that there were some things that definitely could not be replicated on consoles that could happen on PC. And so I think when you're talking about retro gaming, you almost can't include PCs because, it's so drastically different.
Almost.
Right.
Yeah, that was why I said almost.
Yeah.
There are games, like Roller Coaster Tycoon, I played the hell out of. I still play the hell out of.
Everybody loves Roller Coaster Tycoon. You were talking about SimCity a second ago, and I wanted to bring up the point that they did work, but they seemed like there wasn't enough information for some of the stuff. Like when you built a bigger city, you couldn't do anything to fix problems. There was a point where you had outlived the code of the game with what you had created.
Right, I see what you're saying.
Just simply because you had done so much, because of the system, I would assume. I'm not sure there, but even SimCity 13, talking about retro and current, the code isn't up to date with what people create in their cities. There's problems. So trying to create such a complex game is really difficult even then, which is why other games like King's Quest, the kind of PC point-and-click adventure, worked a bit better because they had a larger scope, but they didn't need all of that extra code. They could concentrate on a smaller thing at a time. And that's probably why some of those games worked out better and are more loved. I don't know, personally for me, King's Quest 6 was my favorite. A lot of people have played most of them and they have their own favorites, but
and King's Quest 6 is actually a pretty popular one. As far as I know, that's hailed as the best.
I don't know why it's my favorite and it's the best, but all I remember about it at the moment, because I played through it a couple of times, I don't think I've beat it yet. That's how extreme these games are.
Oh yeah, back in the day, the adventure games were completely brutal.
I think I have gotten as far as going into hell, basically. Yeah.
That's which was pretty far along, actually.
Yeah.
I think you're close to the end of the game at that. Oh no! Now I remember I have beat it. Okay.
Never mind.
But it's definitely.
Never mind. Disregard most of what he just said.
Disregard his
last. It's
last
a fun game, and that's how complicated they are. You can forget how much you've played just because it takes so long to get things done. You can sit there
Yeah.
staring through the hole in the wall, playing the funny mechanics. I don't know if you know about that, but that's one of the little jokes that game had.
Forgot about the hole in the wall.
The hole in the wall.
that was ridiculous.
It was.
All right, getting off of
Terrible
King's Quest
subjects.
for a little bit.
No.
And some games that were, kind of fuzzier on whether or not they should be considered retro. I think there's one definitely we can consider retro, and another just like huge difference maker in its genre, and that was Doom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doom was a big one. Doom really made the first-person shooter genre what it is. Duck Hunt sort of introduced the concept, assuming it was in fact the first-person shooter. It was definitely one of the first.
Yeah.
But Doom definitely
Revolutionized.
solidified what it could be.
Revolutionized and solidified. I definitely agree.
I agree too.
And we have Doom to thank for the state of modern gaming too, with
Yeah.
with all the Call of Duties and your Halo 5s and your all the rest of those.
There's
And
so
all your
many
other
first-person
stuff.
shooters now. It's just crazy.
And they all stem back to Doom.
And then Doom stems back to Duck Hunters. So there's a definite line that you could go back and trace the history.
Of
Yep.
course. And Doom was another one that people were so proud, like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I beat Doom.
And
It's
It's like, it was also really hard.
yeah, it was. I also wanted to bring up people are creating custom maps for Doom even to this day. People love the game so much that they want to play new content, old feel.
Yeah, and it says a lot about a game when it can survive that long. I mean, Doom came out in what, 97, something like that?
Something
Such
like
resilience.
And it's, 16 years later, it's still running strong, and that's the sign of a good game.
And people
there
are
aren't-
still playing it.
There aren't very many modern games that people even continue to play. As soon as there's an update on a Call of Duty game, as soon as there's a new one, people ditch the old one
Yep.
in order to play the new one.
Yep.
But, with things like, people are still playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, and that's a 12-year-old game now.
Yeah.
And it says a lot about the state of modern gaming that people will dump the old game in favor of,
the
an
new
update,
shiny one.
as opposed to just, keeping a game updated.
That
Yeah.
may speak a lot to why games have gotten worse, if people are just going to dump them quickly.
Yeah.
It's
indeed.
I don't know if that speaks to the state of games or the state of gamers, or if that sort of goes hand in hand, but I don't know. That's something
It
we can
might.
talk about another time.
It's definitely something we brought up for ourselves to walk into another time. I don't know how
Yes,
that happens.
kidding.
indeed. Make more topics
Oy.
for our...
We can also talk...
But we were
Go ahead.
talking about, retro style games and how those weren't quite the same thing. And a lot of those actually have come forth on the PC and on, like Xbox Live Arcade or PlayStation Network, or even, the Nintendo eShop nowadays.
Yep. That's
And
true.
it's PC gaming is, it's trying to come back to the forefront of gaming because, back in the day it was so radically different that there wasn't a lot that converge on PC and on consoles, but now it's really trying to bring the big budget titles to the PC because the PC is typically a lot more powerful than a console can be.
Yeah.
But you don't have to sacrifice the controls necessarily, or you can use completely different controls. I happen to like the keyboard and mouse setup for first-person shooters on PCs.
Right,
But,
right.
I'm sort of getting off topic here now. The retro style games are also coming out as freeware games for the PC, like things like Cave Story, which
Yeah.
I don't know if I've mentioned. I think actually I did tell you that Cave Story was a one-man project. Like, it was just one guy, one Japanese guy over the course of 5 years.
That's still so
That is
crazy
still
to me
so
because
very
it sounds like
amazing.
he made a very, very good game.
He made a fantastic game, and he'd made a couple other games before that which weren't quite as good. And I don't know the stories on those. I do know that Cave Story was, the big hit, and it was released as a freeware game at first, and then it's gotten some updated re-releases lately. It really picked up steam just about 2007, 2008, and it was released in 2004.
Wow.
By the time it came out, and by the time it picked up steam, it was actually retro style as opposed to how it was slightly out of date when he started development.
Right, right.
That's something that's noteworthy about it.
It
And
is.
another game that parallels that with the fact that it gets worked on more after it was created is Minecraft. And
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
it's
indeed.
noteworthy in the retro style for a lot of reasons, of course, more than just its blocky nature. But they're updating that game all the time.
All the time.
Same thing with Terraria. There's other games like that, but they're
Right.
really
And
kind
Minecraft,
Go-
I'm sorry to interrupt. But Minecraft is really kind of a perfect blend between the ideas of retro and modern gaming.
It
Because
is.
there's a lot in Minecraft that it doesn't tell you. You just sort of have to experiment and figure out on your own. But then there's also, it's a great use of the technology that we have in modern gaming now, too. I mean, it doesn't really restrict itself. It's constantly building entirely new worlds every time you start a new game.
Every time.
And
that's
you definitely could not have made that happen on, the NES or the Super Nintendo, despite, how it looks. Like, graphically speaking, it's fine, but it's so processor intensive because it's building an entire new world every time you play it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it does end up being very intensive, and you need pretty good computer to run it nicely.
That's true, but
But I mean,
Right.
that's
it's pretty worth it.
on the one hand, it's worth it, but it's also part of being such a unique game. That's part of what it does, and if you
Yeah.
really like that kind of thing, you're gonna pay to make it work
You're
and
gonna
look
make
nice.
it work.
Right.
That's true.
Well, look nice as you can within Minecraft.
Oh god.
At least on the default skin. I've seen a lot of, like, HD skins for Minecraft, which look absolutely just
They're
Unreal.
remarkable.
They do. There's some crazy stuff going on, and they'd probably kill some computers with that stuff.
Oh, probably.
oh god, mine would not be able to handle it.
We're lucky to play Minecraft at all and be able to
Yeah.
record it, so we know
Right.
exactly what you're talking about.
Oh man, it's just the retro style it's coming back
It
in
is.
full force, and being kind of an indie game nerd, like I like the stuff like Cave Story and Minecraft, all the small time stuff, who are really putting more effort into the game because they don't have so much budget. You know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
Cave Story, it was one guy. He was working on the entire thing in his spare time, over the course of 5 years. He did the whole thing by himself. And it's great to see, it's just some of the smaller time games, even they might take it back a little bit in terms of style. And, maybe that's also a limitation of budget and efforts and team, because they can only do so much. But it's also a neat throwback to that style. And they really, not just in terms of looks and sounds, but in feel, they actually get that across. And that's what I really like. And, just a classic example to me is Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game
Yeah,
remake.
that's.
And I'm a huge Scott Pilgrim nut. I can
Yep.
tell you the whole series top to bottom from memory almost. But just looking at the game, I mean, it's another like a side-scrolling beat 'em up like Castle Crashers and River City Ransom and Streets of Rage that you don't see so many of anymore. And it's such a wonderful. It's a love letter to like retro gaming and. In terms of feel, in terms of looks, in terms of sound, and it's wonderful on all counts, and it's something that, it really proves that you can still make a retro style game with modern gaming sensibilities. Like, it doesn't, back in Streets of Rage or whatever, you couldn't get so many, there was only so much that you could get because there was only so much that they had made, but, as you go through Scott Pilgrim, there are actually, you unlock combos and you can buy items and things that they didn't necessarily think of so much. And I mean, River City Ransom kind of had that going on, and it's a neat callback to that, but Scott Pilgrim also brought in a lot that they couldn't have done otherwise,
That's true.
especially with the soundtrack, because it's got the soundtrack to Scott Pilgrim versus the World is done by Anamanaguchi, who is it's a chiptune punk band. It's a 4-piece rock outfit playing along with a hacked NES.
Ooh.
Which always sounds crazy when you hear it. You'll have to go look it up yourself.
Right. In concept, it's a little strange, but it works really well, especially for this. And it's something else that just really would not have been possible just technologically for the Super Nintendo. I mean, the game itself, like, just by feel alone could have worked, but the music, because it was done in, like, it was just a few years ago, it was, it's something that they can continue to make better and that they can keep up with. And they have, actually. There's been a couple, I mean, it's like a 3-year-old game now, but they're still releasing some DLC for it.
Ooh.
That's pretty good. You said there were new characters coming out, if I remember.
Yeah, there's just a couple new characters. I mean, I guess I haven't really got a chance to try out the new characters yet. But I guess, they handle pretty similarly to one of the ones that's already in there. But going back to the soundtrack for a minute, I'm sort of getting off on tangents. It's the Super Nintendo sound chip wouldn't have been able to handle, having like an actual recorded guitar noise. Like it just would have been too big for the cartridge. It wouldn't have worked.
That's true.
8-bit is not the same sound as the string of a guitar, basically. It would
Exactly, and it's a completely different
frequency number.
Well, it's a completely different frequency. It's a completely different style. It's a completely different animal in terms of actually recording it and producing it. Like, especially within the Super Nintendo sound chip. Like, that can only handle so much without sampling it way, way, way down.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
So it's nice to see. I do like retro style games over retro games to some degree. Like with Nintendo and Super Nintendo games especially, if you get too much happening on screen at once, it starts to really slow down.
That's
and
true.
that kind of messes with your groove a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can.
To say the least.
And then in other games, you can use it to your advantage sometimes. So
sometimes, yeah, but other
Not all
times
the
it's just like, it's moving slowly, and
then
my
you
reaction
die.
is all thrown off, and then you die.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of like retro style games more sometimes, is because you can have a lot more on the screen happening at once, and there's more to think about, but you don't have to try and like slow yourself down to match what's happening, and to match the
That's
slowdown
very
because
true.
there isn't any.
That's very true.
Yep.
We do have one more retro style game to talk about. I'd let you talk about Scott Pilgrim all day, but that might be a podcast in itself if people are willing to listen to you about it.
Oh my god, I could have a
probably.
whole Scott Pilgrim podcast and it would last 3 hours, and I still wouldn't scratch the surface.
If not 24.
Right. We're going to have a Scott Pilgrim versus the World 24-hour marathon for an
Marathon
upcoming
podcast for charity.
But that's not this one. So
Yeah.
let's move along.
Yeah.
I think I know what one other game you want to talk about is, and if I'm guessing right, it is a pretty neat blend of retro and modern ideologies in terms of game design. That game we're talking about is Hotline Miami.
Yep.
And I don't know, have you actually played Hotline Miami, or have you just watched other people play it?
I saw one of the people who play Minecraft play it. They were doing a live stream, and I happened to pop over there for a second, and I saw a late gameplay, and it looks pretty intense, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I gotcha. No, Hotline, I actually got it with the Humble Bundle that it was in, which is how I got into the indie gaming scene, really. It was like, 6 games for pay what you want. How could you not?
How could
Yeah.
you not? Indeed.
That's
Right.
without question.
Yeah.
Right. So I picked up Hotline Miami. That was what drew me to that bundle, was this game. And it's so intense in terms of, it's one of those that's really punishing, kind of like, it's in retro style, like punishing kind of difficulty. And it also kind of dumps you in, and it very briefly explains, I mean, it kind of in a modern sense, it takes you through, what everything does and how it's kind of context sensitive, which is a little harder to pull off back in the day. But
not enough space for it on the cartridge.
Well, it's just a little bit harder to implement, and it's a little bit
That's
more
true.
complex and harder to get across.
Dual point there again.
Which, I mean, nowadays they've sort of figured it out, but back in the day, no one knew how to really make that clear. So it's a good thing that Hotline Miami does take the time to explain to you, okay, when you're near an enemy, this button punches them. If you've got something in your hand, then this uses that. If this enemy is down on the ground, then, you can finish them off with this is all with the same button.
Wow.
And it's good that
Wow.
it explains that to you, because otherwise, you're just mashing buttons and hoping that everything does something.
Yeah.
But
Or something does something.
that it does something resembling anything.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Well,
But at the
anything
same
that's
time, it had that retro feel to it, not only, especially in the looks, because, it's very simplistic. And the music is not exactly retro style, but it actually works better for it just because of the game it is. And it's again, it's kind of a retro like it's got a retro modern ideology blend there. Like how Battletoads was it was super hard, but it punished you in more ways than one. Like if you died, it took you quite some time to respawn and it set you back a ways. But Hotline Miami is played in such short bursts that if you die, like, you know, you can come back just about instantly, and there's only like it takes you through floor by floor. So, you know, the floors are pretty small, so if you screw up about halfway through a floor, it's not as big a loss as if you screwed up halfway through a level in Battletoads.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's oh.
That's painful, right?
Mini stroke right there, some at the very
Ouch.
least.
Yeah, so I mean there is that aspect of modern gaming in that it's a little bit more forgiving, but it is that because it's more difficult, and it's kind of, you know, it's a hook because, you know, it's because you can just do it instantly. You don't have to really work your way back to where you were.
That's
You
true.
can, you know, it keeps you playing. It's just like, all right, come on, like, you know, you can do this, and because you can do it just about instantly, there's almost no excuse not to.
That's
Yeah,
true.
it's like you're not wasting any time doing it 30 times if it only takes 10 seconds to try.
Exactly.
Something different happens each time. That means you're figuring something out.
Of course. And, you know, it's pretty, like, it is hard, but it is all possible. And it goes back to what we were talking about with Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, that game.
It's, you know, it presents a challenge for you,
Oh.
but you know you can do it, and, you know, it's always your fault.
Yeah.
Always your fault.
And you know exactly how it's your fault and what little thing you need to do so you don't have that same mistake again.
So that it's not your fault.
Yeah. I think we've.
So-
Go ahead. Sorry.
You go ahead.
No,
Jesus.
fine.
Boys.
We've come to an end.
Sam, you go
here.
ahead.
Me.
Yes, you. Bring it home. What do we got?
We've got outros and recommendations.
Yeah,
Bringing up in the
Definitely
joints.
we do. No doubt that there's a lot more we could talk about with these games. Obviously, you know, there were so many that we wanted to talk about, but we've only got so much time. We don't have all day, and neither do you. So rest assured that there's a lot more where this came from. But with that said, we would like to just leave you with a couple of things that we've been into lately, and for quite some time, depending on who you ask. And, you know, just things that we think you might be interested in as well, that, you know, we think you should check out. My recommendation for this week is someone, like I just mentioned them, we were talking about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I want to mention Anamanaguchi. Like I said, they are a chiptune punk band, and they lean less towards straight up video game style music, and like they claim they're influenced more by bands like Weezer, and you know, you really can hear that. It's not so much like video game music with guitars as it is rock music with an NES, which is interesting to hear. And like I said, they composed the soundtrack for Scott Pilgrim the game, so if you're into that, if you need a reason to go get that game, Anamanaguchi should be that reason. Besides the fact that it's Scott Pilgrim. But they also just released a new album, which is much less game-centric than the rest of their music, basically. And it's all the better for it. Like, it focuses on a couple different styles, and, you know, it's up to you to decide whether or not you think it works. I think it all works. So, if you're interested in that kind of thing, their entire discography, is up on their SoundCloud page, which there will be a link to that in the description. And I think it might actually be up on their YouTube channel, too. If it is, I'll link to that in the description as well. So
Wow.
definitely go check them out. Anamanaguchi. Plus, they're awesome live. So
Well,
just going to throw that out there.
Gotta do that.
Yeah.
I guess we'll move on to my recommendation, which it's kind of embarrassing, but at the same time, I've been playing Osu, which is a rhythm and beats game that allows you to use the mouse, kind of like you'd use your feet in DDR, but it's a click and drag. It's not always click. Sometimes.
Did you guys play Elite Beat Agents? This is basically what Osu is.
no, neither of us
Or I
have.
suppose I should have that backwards. Elite Beat Agents is Osu. Like, Osu was there first.
Fair enough. It's
enough.
free. you can make your own beat maps, and likely the genre or genres of music you like or prefer have already got beat maps available. So it's a pretty fun game. You might want to be careful. You can hurt yourself if you're not careful or you don't have the right setup. It's happened to me.
Also, I guess it's a major time sink.
It can be if you like jamming out to the music you like a lot. That happened to me as well.
Indeed. I should
Anyway.
know.
That says a lot about the game, I think, guys. So definitely, Osu is worth checking out. I'm probably going to have to do it myself.
There will be a
Sure, then
link
we'll
in the
play.
description for that as well.
Yeah. All right, so Sam, you got something that these lovely people would like to hear?
Only if they like photo editors. Well, not really. You'll like this even if you're not big on photo editing. Paint.net is a freeware art program that kinda is like MS Paint, only you get a lot more bang for your buck, and guess what? It costs no money. So you won't be spending any anyway. But it's kind of like an upgrade from Windows MS Paint in that it has layers and you can pick a heck of a lot more colors, you can do a lot of things. There's filters, there's adjustments.
So really,
that you
it's
can
more like the
use.
GIMP or Photoshop then.
Yeah, basically.
All right.
And what else
And-
is there about that? I seem to remember something that's pretty cool about that program aside from being free.
Yes, there's a lot of free plugins, so you can customize it as well. You can make it anything you want, almost.
Almost.
That's always nice.
Yeah, basically, I think the only one thing it can't do is render out any animation stuff, but hey, you can probably find a plugin for that.
Probably.
So,
We'll see. So if you are completely opposed to giving Adobe your money, or you don't have money to give to Adobe, then
Alternatively.
Paint.net is what you're looking for.
indeed, check it out. Just give it a chance.
Yeah.
It may
Sounds
surprise
like a
you.
useful tool.
And I think
I
a
know
note
not-
we need to make here for the viewers is that next time Ghostie or Sam, whatever you prefer to call her, is in URG Radio or URG Radio, she will be talking more. We're going to work on that.
Oh goodness, yes.
Yeah, she was a little quiet this time. She did
Yeah.
have a few interesting insights, though.
She did, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank both of you for joining me for this first episode of the podcast. It was great to have you on.
Anytime. We're here for you when you need us, and hopefully we'll get better with this as we go. We did have a few mistakes this time around.
Yeah.
You know what? It's fine. They don't care. They love us anyway, I hope.
I
Please
hope.
love us.
Please,
Yeah.
please love us.
All right, anyway, I think that about wraps it up. If there's something that you'd like to recommend to us or something you want to hear us talk about in the future of the podcast, go ahead and leave us a comment. Let us know. We'll be sure to check out whatever you want us to talk about or you just want us to check out. It sounds like a lot of fun. That's why we do this, is to talk with you guys.
Yep.
And to share what we love and to share what you love.
That's definitely the
That
idea.
is definitely true.
We hope to see you for we hope you hear a new podcast real soon. We
Rather,
get to talk to you
yes.
about
Yeah.
the topic.
Hopefully, we won't be dragging ass as much as we were for this one.
Yeah,
Oh,
we did.
Definitely not.
All right, so thanks a lot for listening, you guys. I've been KV.
I've been 6.
And I've been Ghostie.
Thanks for listening to URG Radio. Take care, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.